Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. And today we are going deep on something super practical. What makes a truly great assistant brand manager? We've got a whole stack of interview questions that companies actually use to try and spot these folks. And our mission, you and me today, is to pull out what really matters in this role.
Yeah.
Those key skills, the knowledge, and I think even more importantly, that way of thinking that really makes someone shine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whether you are, thinking about a career in brand management, maybe trying to put together a top-notch marketing team, or even if you're just curious about what goes into making the brands we all know and love well, this deep dive into these interview questions is going to be eye-opening. It really reveals what companies value in a candidate. We're going to unpack the qualities that truly set successful candidates apart.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is these aren't just, random questions that they throw at people. Our source material breaks them down into a few key areas.
Yeah.
You've got the operational stuff, like how they handle different situations, then the role-specific knowledge they need to have, and then, of course, those all-important behavioral questions. How do they actually work as part of a team? So we're getting a really full picture from their basic marketing smarts to their analytical skills, how creative they are, and, yeah, how well they play with others.
Right, right.
Okay, so let's dive into it. Let's start with those operational and situational questions. Where do we begin?
Well, the first one that always jumps out at me is name one brand that has a good marketing strategy. What makes it good, and how would you increase its customer engagement? And this isn't just about rattling off a famous brand name, it's about going deeper. They really want to see if a candidate can identify why that strategy works, what makes it successful, and then, even more interesting, can they come up with ways to make it even better? So, a really strong candidate should be able to pick out specific elements of that successful strategy, like a clear target audience or consistent messaging.
So it's like, can you not only see the winning plays, but can you also, call the next one?
Exactly, exactly.
It tells you if they can just observe or if they can actually strategize and come up with real, actionable improvements.
Yeah.
I think a key takeaway for anyone listening is to really understand successful brand strategies, you need to be able to identify those core elements. Who are they talking to? What are they saying? And how consistent are they with that message?
Exactly. Okay, so then you get into some thought-provoking questions, like this one. Are some brands so strong that they don't need advertising? Why or why not? And this one is a real gem because it forces candidates to think about how even the biggest brands in the world, they can't just coast on their reputation. Brand strength is not a, set it and forget it kind of thing. It needs to be actively maintained in a market that's constantly changing.
It really makes you think, right? Like those giant brands that seem, invincible,
Hmm.
could they really just fade away if they stop talking to us?
It's possible, yeah.
It highlights that maintaining brand presence is an ongoing effort. You're on top, you got to stay top of mind. Complacency can really be a downfall. So the takeaway here, even established brands, they need to actively engage to maintain their position.
Definitely. Advertising is not just about bringing in new customers. It's about constantly reminding your existing ones why they chose you in the first place.
Right, right. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, here's a scenario-based question. Our company is sponsoring an industry conference. How would you increase our brand awareness at the event? And they might even throw in some hints like mentioning things like having a booth or handing out brochures.
Right.
But this really moves away from that big picture strategy and into how do you execute in a specific situation?
Yeah, exactly. It's more about the practical application.
Right. So just showing up with a table and some flyers, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
They want to see some creativity. How are you going to stand out at this event and make a real impression? I think for anyone listening, the key takeaway is creating effective brand awareness at events. It requires more than the basics. You got to have some creative tactics to really grab people's attention.
I agree. And this also touches on something we talked about earlier. Understanding the target audience. Who is going to be at this conference? How do you tailor your approach to best connect with them in that environment? And that leads nicely into the next question. What marketing techniques would you use to reach a specific segment of customers? And they might give an example, like, say, a younger audience.
Yeah. And here, they're looking for someone who has a good understanding of all the different marketing channels out there and knows which ones are going to be most effective for different groups of people. You can't just talk to everyone the same way. Knowing the nuances of each demographic
Oh.
and really tailoring your approach, that's crucial. So, for example, if they're talking about reaching a younger audience, you might expect a strong candidate to talk about things like influencer marketing, creating engaging content on platforms like TikTok, or maybe even building an online community. The takeaway here is successful marketing is all about tailoring your techniques to really resonate with each specific segment of your audience.
Exactly. You got it. Okay, last one in this section, and this one gets into the analytical side of things. If we asked you to prepare a benchmark analysis, how would you start your research? This is key for seeing if they have the skills to gather competitive intelligence and how they approach it.
Yeah, a benchmark analysis, that's all about seeing how you stack up against the competition, right? So their answer tells you a lot about their process. Do they know where to find the right data? What kind of information are they looking for? It's about showing they can systematically collect that data, organize it, and then actually use it to inform their decisions. The takeaway here is that understanding competitive benchmarking is crucial for identifying opportunities and also threats. And a strong candidate is going to demonstrate a really structured approach to gathering and interpreting that competitive data.
Yeah, exactly. A benchmark analysis, it's essentially comparing your brand's performance to key competitors across a bunch of different metrics to figure out best practices and areas you can improve. Okay, so let's shift gears again. Let's move on to those role-specific questions. These really get into the nitty-gritty of what an assistant brand manager does day to day.
Awesome. Let's do it. Okay, first one here. What metrics would you monitor in this role and why? What reports would you create to keep track of them? Now, this gets right to the heart of whether they understand how to measure success in brand management.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is they're asking for both the what and the why. It's not enough to just, throw out some marketing jargon. They
Yeah.
need to show they understand how those metrics connect to the big picture, the overall health of the brand and the business goals. And then that part about creating reports, that shows they can communicate those insights effectively to the rest of the team.
Right, because numbers on their own, they don't mean much if you can't turn them into a story that everyone else can understand. So, what kind of reports are they thinking about? How often are they generating them? Who needs to see them? It really reveals their understanding of how information flows within a company.
Yeah.
So, for anyone listening, a really important takeaway is that a strong assistant brand manager understands those key performance indicators, those KPIs, and they can translate that data into actionable reports that everyone can use.
For sure. Okay, next question. What factors make or break a brand online? This one really tests their understanding of the digital landscape, which, let's face it, is absolutely essential today.
Oh, yeah. A brand's online presence, that can be a huge asset or a total disaster, right?
Mm,
This question is getting at their understanding of everything from the website's user experience to how they're engaging on social media, managing their online reputation, and even like how they show up in search results. It's a really broad topic, so their answer tells you a lot about their digital savviness. The takeaway here is that a successful online brand presence really hinges on things like that user experience I mentioned, engaging content, and proactive reputation management.
exactly. And that ties in really well with the next question. What do you think are the strong and weak points of our brand compared to our competition? So for this one, they need to have done their homework, come prepared to offer a balanced and objective view of where the brand stands in the market.
Yeah, and it's not about just, sucking up to the interviewer. They want to see if a candidate can critically assess the brand, point out both the good and the bad, and really understand how they stack up against their competitors. That shows strategic thinking and a good grasp of the competitive landscape. The key takeaway is a strong candidate can objectively evaluate a brand's strengths and weaknesses relative to those competitors.
Right. Okay, last one in this section, and it focuses on the importance of social media. How can poor or non-existent social media activity hurt a brand's reputation? Mention 2 or 3 things that companies shouldn't do when replying to customers online. This one really highlights how crucial social media is for building and, more importantly, protecting a brand's image.
Oh yeah, social media is a double-edged sword, right? Done well, it can build amazing communities and foster loyalty. But if you make mistakes, they can spread like wildfire and really hurt your reputation. So their answer to this question should show they understand both the risks and the basic rules of engagement with customers online, the do's and definitely the don'ts. And the source material here really emphasizes the negative impact of poor engagement, which is a crucial point. The takeaway is that effective social media management is vital for maintaining a positive brand reputation. Avoiding those negative interactions is absolutely key.
Totally. Things like ignoring customer complaints, getting into arguments online, or even just having inconsistent messaging that can all really damage a brand. Okay, so last but not least, let's move into the behavioral questions. These are all about understanding how a candidate has acted in the past, which can be a pretty good indicator of how they might behave in the future.
Yeah, I love these questions. They give you a real peek into someone's personality and how they work as part of a team.
Right.
So here's a good one. What's the best advertising campaign you've seen lately? What makes it so successful? This one tells you a lot about their awareness of current marketing trends and if they can analyze what makes creative work effective.
Yeah, and it's not about whether they personally liked it or not. It's about being able to articulate why it worked, what resonated with them, what were those specific elements that made it stand out, what was the strategy behind it. This shows their ability to critically evaluate a campaign and link it back to those marketing objectives. The takeaway here is that a strong candidate can break down successful advertising campaigns and understand the thinking that drove them.
It also gives you a sense of what they consider to be good marketing. What kind of campaigns really grab their attention? Why? It can reveal a lot about their creative tastes and their understanding of what connects with consumers. Okay, so next up, we've got a couple of questions that really focus on accountability. How do you manage to meet deadlines? And have you ever failed to complete a task on time? These get into their organizational skills, their time management, and also their honesty and ability to learn from their mistakes.
For sure, everyone misses a deadline now and then. The important thing is how to do self-awareness and a proactive approach to managing their workload. So the key takeaway here is that effective time management and that ability to learn from those past failures, those are absolutely crucial for success as an assistant brand manager.
Absolutely. Okay, so then you get into questions about taking initiative and how they handle feedback. Here's a couple. Have you ever suggested an idea to reach out to more customers? If so, what did you recommend and what did your team think? And how do you handle criticism? Or, how would you handle criticism? This really assesses their proactiveness, their communication skills, and how resilient they are.
Yeah. And this is a multi-part question for a reason. They want to know if someone is willing to speak up, put their ideas out there, how well they can explain those ideas to others, and, very importantly, how they react when those ideas aren't immediately embraced. Being able to take feedback constructively, that's so important in any team environment. The takeaway here is a strong candidate demonstrates initiative, communicates effectively, and handles criticism with grace.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Okay, and last question. Describe the most challenging project you've worked on so far. What made it difficult, and how did you deal with it? Now, this is where you really get to hear about their real-world experience and how they navigate those tough situations.
Yeah.
What were the specific obstacles they faced? What steps did they take to overcome them? And ultimately, what was the outcome? Their answers should showcase their resourcefulness, their problem-solving skills, and their ability to persevere even when things get tough. The takeaway here is that being able to navigate challenging projects and demonstrate those problem-solving skills, that's a key attribute for anyone in this role.
Absolutely. So, looking back at all these questions, what are some of the big themes that stand out to you? What does this tell us about what really makes a good assistant brand manager?
Well, I think it's clear that it's not enough to just, have a textbook understanding of marketing. A great candidate needs to be able to think strategically. They need to see that big picture for the brand, and then they need to be able to back that up with strong analytical skills, being able to really understand the data and the market dynamics.
Yeah.
But you can't forget the creative side. They have to be able to come up with fresh ideas, connect with people in unique ways, and all of that is built on a solid understanding of both the online and the offline marketing landscape. They have to know how to use the right tools to reach their audience and build the brand effectively.
Exactly. And it's not just about what they know. Those behavioral questions really show us how important communication and teamwork are. You have to be able to articulate your ideas clearly, work collaboratively, and take feedback gracefully. And then, of course, those basic things like being organized, meeting deadlines, taking responsibility, those are non-negotiable.
Oh, sure, for sure.
And maybe the biggest takeaway for anyone listening is that a truly great assistant brand manager, they're constantly learning, they're naturally curious about the world around them, and they can adapt as the marketing landscape continues to evolve.
That's so true. So whether you're thinking about a career in brand management, maybe you're looking for the perfect person to join your team, or maybe you're just fascinated by what makes brands tick, this deep dive into these interview questions, it gives you a really valuable perspective. You can see the full range of skills and qualities that companies are really looking for in this vital role.
Yeah, and it gets you thinking, given this mix of analytical and creative abilities, what other roles in a company could benefit from someone with this skill set?
Mm.
And stepping back even further, how can understanding these core competencies be helpful beyond just hiring for a marketing position? What other questions might you be asking, not just of a potential candidate, but even when you're assessing the health and future direction of a brand? There's definitely a lot to consider here.
Lots to think about. All right, well, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.